Daniel Carter stepped out of the sleek diplomatic shuttle onto the vast landing platform of Selvera, the capital world of the Velari Empire. The air was thick with the scent of exotic flowers, and the twin suns in the sky cast a golden hue over the grand palace ahead. His mission was simple: secure a peace treaty between the warring factions of the empire. But from the moment he arrived, something felt off. The alien guards lining the path to the palace whispered among themselves, their piercing violet eyes locked onto him. Some bowed slightly as he walked by, while others simply stared, as if seeing a ghost. Daniel adjusted his uniform and kept walking. Why are they looking at me like that? He wondered. He had worked with aliens before: diplomatic meetings, negotiations, trade agreements. But this was different. There was a tension in the air, something unspoken yet undeniable. At the palace entrance, two towering Velari warriors, clad in ceremonial armor, crossed their long energy spears in front of him, blocking his path. "You stand before Queen Aethera, ruler of the Velari Empire," one of them declared. "Proceed with respect." Daniel nodded. "That's why I'm here." The guards uncrossed their spears and stepped aside, allowing him to enter the grand hall. The sight before him was breathtaking. Massive crystal chandeliers floated in the air, casting soft blue light across the obsidian walls. Golden banners embroidered with ancient Velari symbols lined the chamber, and at the far end, seated upon a magnificent throne of silver and emerald, was Queen Aethera herself. She was stunning, even by human standards. Tall and regal, her skin a deep sapphire blue, with long silver hair flowing down her shoulders. Her piercing violet eyes locked onto him the moment he stepped forward. A wave of silence filled the chamber. The noble advisors flanking her throne looked between her and Daniel with expressions of curiosity and perhaps concern. Daniel took a deep breath and spoke, keeping his voice calm and professional. "Your Majesty, I am Daniel Carter, an envoy from the United Terran Federation. I have come to discuss the terms of peace between your people and—" Before he could finish, Aethera stood up. The entire hall gasped in unison. Daniel froze. Had he offended her? He barely had time to react before the queen descended the steps of her throne. Her movements slow, deliberate. Her expression was unreadable as she approached him, her gaze intense. The closer she came, the more Daniel noticed the subtle trembling of her hands, the way her breath seemed uneven. Then, without warning, she embraced him. Daniel stiffened. What was happening? The noble advisors gasped once more, some whispering among themselves. Even the guards shifted in place, as if they too were uncertain about what they were witnessing. Aethera's voice was soft, barely above a whisper. "You were always meant for me." Daniel's heart pounded in his chest. What was she talking about? For a brief moment, he felt the warmth of her body against his, the unfamiliar but oddly comforting scent of her presence. But more than that, he could feel something. A strange sense of familiarity, like he had been here before, even though he knew he never had. Slowly, Aethera pulled back just enough to look into his eyes, searching for something. "You do not remember, do you?" she asked, her voice filled with something close to sorrow. Daniel swallowed hard. I don't understand." The queen's violet eyes shimmered with emotion. "You are the one from the prophecy." Daniel blinked. "Excuse me." The nobles in the hall bowed their heads in reverence, while the warriors dropped to one knee. Daniel took a step back, shaking his head. "No, wait a minute. I'm just a diplomat. I don't know anything about a prophecy." Aethera studied him for a long moment before signing. "Then we have much to discuss." Before Daniel could question further, the chamber doors burst open. A messenger, out of breath and visibly shaken, rushed inside. "Your Majesty," the alien soldier cried. "The warlord clans have discovered the prophecy has been set in motion. They will not allow the human to remain alive." Daniel felt the weight of every eye in the room turned toward him. His mission had just become far more complicated than he ever imagined. The room fell silent as the weight of the messenger's words settled over everyone. The warlord clans will not allow the human to remain alive. Daniel Carter felt a chill run down his spine. He had come to negotiate peace, but now his very existence had made him a target. He glanced around, seeing the concern on the faces of the noble advisors and guards. The queen, however, remained calm. Queen Ethera turned to the messenger. "How much time do we have?" The soldier bowed slightly, still catching his breath. Their forces are already moving. They see the prophecy as a threat to their rule. If they reach the capital, they will try to take the human, or kill him. Daniel tensed. "All right, can someone please explain to me what's going on? What prophecy? Why am I part of it?" Ethera's violet eyes softened, as if she had expected his confusion. She gestured for him to follow her. "Come," she said. "I will show you. The hidden vaults." The queen led Daniel through the palace, past long corridors of polished obsidian walls and glowing symbols carved in ancient Velari script. The air grew cooler as they descended deeper underground. Finally, they reached a massive door of silver and gold, guarded by 2 warriors. As soon as Ethera approached, the door hummed and slid open, revealing a vast chamber inside. Daniel's eyes widened. The room looked like a forgotten tomb of knowledge. Tall stone pillars, covered in glowing blue symbols, stretched toward the ceiling. At the center of the room, on an elevated platform, rested a massive stasis pod, its glass surface covered in dust. Ethera walked forward and wiped the dust away. Beneath the glass was a suit of armor, human armor. Daniel took a step closer, heart pounding. The armor was not of alien design. It was something out of Earth's ancient history, but with advanced modifications. It looked battle-worn, yet still powerful. "This belonged to the last human warrior who stood beside our people," Ethera said. "The lost guardian." Daniel swallowed. "You're saying humans fought for your empire before?" Ethera nodded. "More than that. A human helped shape our empire. He was our strongest ally, our greatest protector. And when he disappeared, our people waited for his return." Daniel frowned. "And now you think I'm his reincarnation or something?" The queen looked at him, serious. "I do not believe in coincidences, Daniel Carter. The mark of destiny." Daniel sighed, running a hand through his hair. This was insane. He was just a diplomat, not some legendary warrior reborn. "I'm not your guardian," he said. "I don't know anything about this prophecy." Ethera stepped closer. "Then explain this." She reached for his wrist and pressed her fingertips against his skin. A sudden warmth spread through his arm, and then a symbol glowed faintly beneath his skin. Daniel's eyes widened as he saw the same mark that was carved on the pillars in the vault. The queen's voice was soft, almost reverent. "It is the same mark our guardian had." Daniel took a shaky breath, his mind racing. This wasn't just a diplomatic misunderstanding. This was something far bigger than he had ever imagined. Before he could speak, a deep rumbling sound echoed through the vault. The queen's guards immediately drew their weapons. "The palace is under attack," one of them said. "The warlords are here. The escape." Ethera didn't hesitate. She turned to Daniel. "We must leave. Now." Daniel's instincts told him to stay low and let the warriors handle it. But something in the queen's eyes, a deep trust, made him nod. The guards led them through a hidden exit, but as soon as they emerged into the open corridors, they were met with resistance. The warlord's soldiers, clad in dark armor, charged toward them. The queen's guards fought back, their energy weapons humming with deadly force. Daniel, unarmed, ducked behind a pillar as laser fire cut through the air. His mind raced. "Think, Carter. You're not a soldier. You're a diplomat. Use your head." He spotted a loose metal beam above the attacking soldiers. Without thinking, he grabbed a fallen energy rifle from the ground, aimed, and fired at the beam's support structure. The shot hit its mark, and the beam came crashing down, blocking the enemy's path. "Your Majesty." The alien soldier cried. The warlord clans have discovered the prophecy has been set in motion. They will not allow the human to remain alive. Daniel felt the weight of every eye in the room turned toward him. His mission had just become far more complicated than he ever imagined. The room fell silent as the weight of the messenger's words settled over everyone. The warlord clans will not allow the human to remain alive. Daniel Carter felt a chill run down his spine. He had come to negotiate peace, but now his very existence had made him a target. He glanced around, seeing the concern on the faces of the noble advisors and guards. The queen, however, remained calm. Queen Athera turned to the messenger. "How much time do we have?" The soldier bowed slightly, still catching his breath. Their forces are already moving. They see the prophecy as a threat to their rule. If they reach the capital, they will try to take the human, or kill him. Daniel tensed. "All right, can someone please explain to me what's going on? What prophecy? Why am I part of it?" Athera's violet eyes softened, as if she had expected his confusion. She gestured for him to follow her. "Come," she said, "I will show you. The hidden vaults." The queen led Daniel through the palace, past long corridors of polished obsidian walls and glowing symbols carved in ancient Velari script. The air grew cooler as they descended deeper underground. Finally, they reached a massive door of silver and gold, guarded by two warriors. As soon as Athera approached, the door hummed and slid open, revealing a vast chamber inside. Daniel's eyes widened. The room looked like a forgotten tomb of knowledge. Tall stone pillars, covered in glowing blue symbols, stretched toward the ceiling. At the center of the room, on an elevated platform, rested a massive stasis pod, its glass surface covered in dust. Athera walked forward and wiped the dust away. Beneath the glass was a suit of armor, human armor. Daniel took a step closer, heart pounding. The armor was not of alien design. It was something out of Earth's ancient history, but with advanced modifications. It looked battle-worn, yet still powerful. "This belonged to the last human warrior who stood beside our people," Athera said. "The lost guardian." Daniel swallowed. "You're saying humans fought for your empire before?" Athera nodded. "More than that. A human helped shape our empire. He was our strongest ally, our greatest protector. And when he disappeared, our people waited for his return." Daniel frowned. "And now you think I'm his reincarnation or something?" The queen looked at him, serious. "I do not believe in coincidences, Daniel Carter." "The mark of destiny." Daniel sighed, running a hand through his hair. This was insane. He was just a diplomat, not some legendary warrior reborn. "I'm not your guardian," he said. "I don't know anything about this prophecy." Athera stepped closer, then explained this. She reached for his wrist and pressed her fingertips against his skin. A sudden warmth spread through his arm, and then a symbol glowed faintly beneath his skin. Daniel's eyes widened as he saw the same mark that was carved on the pillars in the vault. The queen's voice was soft, almost reverent. "It is the same mark our guardian had." Daniel took a shaky breath, his mind racing. This wasn't just a diplomatic misunderstanding. This was something far bigger than he had ever imagined. Before he could speak, a deep rumbling sound echoed through the vault. The queen's guards immediately drew their weapons. "The palace is under attack," one of them said. "The warlords are here." The escape. Athera didn't hesitate. She turned to Daniel. "We must leave. Now." Daniel's instincts told him to stay low and let the warriors handle it. But something in the queen's eyes, a deep trust, made him nod. The guards led them through a hidden exit, but as soon as they emerged into the open corridors, they were met with resistance. The warlord's soldiers, clad in dark armor, charged toward them. The queen's guards fought back, their energy weapons humming with deadly force. She smiled slightly. Luck is just another word for destiny. A dangerous journey ahead. With the palace compromised, they had no choice but to flee. Athera led them toward a waiting ship, a sleek black craft designed for speed. As they climbed aboard, Daniel looked back at the palace, now burning under the warlord attack. This was no longer a negotiation mission. This was a battle for survival. As the ship lifted off, Daniel turned to the queen. "Where are we going?" Athera's expression was determined. "To the Temple of the Ancients," she said, "where all truths will be revealed." Daniel exhaled and nodded. He didn't know what lay ahead, but one thing was clear. His life would never be the same again. The sleek black starship shot through the skies of Selvera, escaping the chaos of the palace below. From the viewport, Daniel could see the city burning, flames rising, smoke twisting in the air, and the distant sounds of battle echoing through the mountains. Queen Athera sat beside him in the cockpit, her violet eyes sharp with focus as she piloted the ship through the atmosphere. The warlord's forces were still on their trail, and every second counted. Daniel gripped the armrest, his heart pounding. Just hours ago, he was a simple diplomat, trying to negotiate peace. Now he was being hunted across an alien world because of some ancient prophecy he didn't even believe in. A sudden warning alarm blared through the cockpit. "They're launching pursuit ships," Athera said, her voice calm but tense. Daniel leaned forward, seeing two enemy fighters gaining on them fast. The warlords weren't giving up. "I assume your ship has weapons?" he asked. Athera pressed a button, revealing a control panel in front of him. "Take the co-pilot's seat. I will fly. You fight." Daniel hesitated for a second, then took control of the targeting system. His hands moved quickly over the unfamiliar interface, adjusting to the alien technology. One of the enemy ships fired. A bright red beam of energy cut past them, missing by inches. Daniel locked onto the first ship and fired back. The ship exploded in a brilliant burst of flames. Athera spared him a glance. "For someone who claims not to be a warrior, you fight like one." Daniel exhaled. "Just lucky, I guess." The second fighter closed in, circling them like a predator. Before Daniel could get a lock, it fired again. The blast rocked their ship. "We've lost shields," Athera warned. "One more hit and we're done." Daniel gritted his teeth, waiting for the enemy pilot to make a mistake. He saw his chance. The ship moved in too close. Now. He pressed the trigger, and the second ship erupted into flames, disappearing in the dark sky. Athera let out a breath. "We are clear. For now." Daniel leaned back, still gripping the controls. "Where exactly are we going?" Athera adjusted their course. "To the Temple of the Ancients. If the prophecy is true, then the answers we seek will be there." Arrival at the temple. The journey to the temple took hours, and during that time, Daniel's mind raced with questions. Who was the lost guardian? Why did the Veluri believe he was connected to their history? And most importantly, why him? The ship finally arrived at a massive valley, hidden deep within Selvera's mountains. The temple stood carved into the cliffs, ancient and untouched for centuries. Towering statues of warriors lined the entrance, their faces worn by time. Athera landed the ship near the entrance and stepped out. Daniel followed, feeling the strange sense of unease as he looked up at the structure. It felt familiar, which made no sense. He had never been here before. Athera led him inside, where the air was cool and heavy with the scent of stone and history. The walls were covered in glowing carvings, depicting battles, victories, and... Daniel stopped in his tracks. One of the carvings showed a human warrior, standing among the Veluri, leading them into battle. His face was not clear, but the armor was identical to the one in the vault. Daniel felt his chest tighten. "That's impossible." Athera stepped beside him. "This is proof. Humans were once part of our empire. The Guardian was real." Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "Okay, maybe humans were here before. But that doesn't mean I'm part of this prophecy." Athera turned to face him. "There is only one way to know for sure." She led him deeper into the temple until they reached a stone altar bathed in soft golden light. "Place your hand here," she instructed, pointing to the altar's center. Daniel hesitated. "And if I don't?" Athera's expression didn't change. "Then we leave, and the warlords destroy everything. This is the only way to understand who you truly are." Daniel exhaled and slowly placed his palm on the altar. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a surge of energy shot through his body. He gasped as visions flashed before his eyes. A battlefield, fire, and smoke. A warrior in the same armor he saw before, fighting alongside the Velari. A queen standing beside him, her face hidden in shadows. The warrior turning, revealing. Daniel stumbled back, heart racing. Athera caught him before he could fall. "What did you see?" she asked. Daniel's breath was unsteady. I don't know, but it felt real." Athera held his gaze, because it was a bond across time. Daniel sat on the temple steps, still trying to process what had just happened. Athera sat beside him, silent for a long moment before speaking. "When I saw you for the first time, I felt something deep inside me," she admitted, "like a memory trying to return. Now I understand why." Daniel turned to her. "You think I'm the guardian reborn?" Athera's voice was quiet. "I think you are more than that." Daniel let out a short laugh, shaking his head. "That's crazy." Athera's hand gently touched his own. "Then why do you feel it too?" Daniel looked into her violet eyes, feeling something unspoken between them, something that had always been there, even if he couldn't explain it. But before he could respond, a deep rumble shook the temple. A distant explosion echoed through the valley. The warlords had found them. Daniel stood, his hesitation replaced with something new, determination. He didn't fully understand what was happening to him, but one thing was clear. He wasn't running anymore. The ground trembled beneath Daniel's feet as another distant explosion rumbled through the valley. The warlords had found them. Queen Athera immediately stood, her violet eyes sharp with focus. "We need to leave. Now." Daniel, still trying to process everything. The visions, the prophecy, the strange connection he felt to this place, forced himself to push aside his confusion. Right now, there was no time for questions. They sprinted through the temple's stone corridors, their footsteps echoing as they reached the entrance. The moment they stepped outside, they saw the enemy approaching. A fleet of dark warships hovered above the valley, their shadows stretching across the ruins. On the ground, hundreds of warriors in heavy armor advanced, energy weapons glowing in their hands. Athera's guards were already taking defensive positions, their weapons drawn. One of her warriors ran up to them. "My queen, we are outnumbered. We cannot hold this position for long." Athera turned to Daniel. "You fought well before. Will you fight again?" Daniel hesitated. He wasn't a soldier. He was a diplomat, trained to talk his way out of conflict, not charge into battle. But looking at the overwhelming enemy forces, he realized there was no talking their way out of this. He took a deep breath and nodded. "Tell me what to do." A warrior's instincts. Athera led him toward a small weapons cache, hidden near the temple entrance. She picked up an energy blade and held it out to him. Daniel took it hesitantly, feeling its strange, weightless balance in his hand. "This was made for the Guardian," Athera said. "It will respond to you." Daniel wasn't sure what she meant, but as soon as his fingers wrapped around the hilt, the blade activated on its own, humming softly with energy. He swallowed. "All right. That's new." Athera smirked. "Let's hope you remember how to use it." Daniel didn't get a chance to answer, because at that moment, the enemy attacked. The first strike. The warriors of the warlord clans charged, their weapons raised. Athera's forces met them head-on. Energy blades clashing, blaster fire lighting up the battlefield. Daniel's instincts screamed at him to stay back, but something inside him, something deep, instinctive, pushed him forward. The first enemy came at him, swinging a heavy plasma axe. Daniel dodged without thinking, his body moving on its own. He pivoted, bringing his energy blade up in a smooth arc, disarming the enemy in one motion. The warrior stumbled back, shocked. Daniel was just as surprised. How did I do that? There was no time to question it. Another attacker rushed him. This time, Daniel countered immediately, blocking the strike and knocking the enemy unconscious with the hilt of his blade. One after another, enemies came at him, and his body reacted before his mind could process. Every movement felt natural, every attack precise. He wasn't fighting like a diplomat trying to survive. He was fighting like a warrior who had done this 1,000 times before. Thera saw this from across the battlefield. Her suspicion was now certainty. Daniel wasn't just connected to the prophecy. He was the Guardian Reborn. The warlord's arrival. Just as the battle seemed to be turning in their favor, a loud roar echoed across the battlefield. A massive armored figure stepped forward from the enemy lines. The warriors around him moved aside, showing clear fear of their leader. Daniel felt the shift in energy. This was someone dangerous. Thera tensed beside him. That's General Kavros, one of the warlord's strongest champions. Kavros removed his helmet, revealing a scared face and cold yellow eyes. He pointed directly at Daniel. You, Kavros growled. You are the reason for this war. Daniel tightened his grip on his energy blade. Funny. I thought I was here to stop it. Kavros smiled darkly. Then fight me, human. Show me if the Guardian's blood still flows through you. Thera stepped in front of Daniel. He is under my protection. Kavros laughed. If he is truly the one from the prophecy, he does not need protection. He raised his massive war axe. He will either prove himself or die. Daniel took a deep breath. He could feel everyone watching, both the enemy and Athera's warriors. He looked at Athera. If I win, will this end? Athera's expression was serious. If you defeat Kavros, the warlords will have no choice but to reconsider. But if you lose, she didn't need to finish. Daniel nodded. He had no choice. All right, he said, stepping forward. Let's do this. The duel begins. The battlefield fell silent as Daniel and Kavros faced each other. Kavros charged first, his war axe swinging down with terrifying force. Daniel rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding the strike. The ground cracked where the axe hit. Daniel countered with a quick slash, but Kavros blocked effortlessly, pushing him back with a powerful kick. Daniel stumbled but didn't fall. He adjusted his stance. His body still moved on instinct, guiding him as if he had fought 100 battles before. Kavros grinned. You have skill, but do you have strength? He attacked again, his blows relentless. Daniel dodged, waiting for an opening. Then he saw it. Kavros overcommitted on a downward swing. Too much force. Daniel sidestepped, spun, and brought his blade across the warlord's side. Kavros roared in pain, stumbling backward. The battlefield erupted into gasps. Daniel didn't stop. He pressed forward, blade moving with perfect precision, forcing Kavros onto the defensive. Finally, Daniel disarmed him, knocking the warlord's axe to the ground. Kavros fell to one knee, defeated. The warlord's warriors stood frozen. Their leader had fallen. Athera stepped beside Daniel, her voice firm. This battle is over. Kavros looked up at Daniel, breathing heavily. You truly are the Guardian. He bowed his head in reluctant respect. Daniel exhaled, realizing what had just happened. The warlords were no longer enemies. They were followers. Athera looked at Daniel with something more than admiration. It was recognition. You have changed the course of history, she whispered. Daniel wasn't sure about history, but he knew one thing. His life would never be the same again. Daniel stood over General Kavros, breathing heavily. His heart pounded in his chest, his body still tense from the fight. The warlord, once fierce and unstoppable, now knelt in defeat. Thera stepped forward, her violet eyes locked on Xavros. Do you accept the outcome of this duel? Xavros, still catching his breath, gave a slow nod. The prophecy was true, he muttered. The Guardian has returned. The warriors of the warlord clans, who had once been enemies, lowered their weapons. Their leader had fallen. The battle was over. Daniel, gripping his energy blade, tried to process what had just happened. A few hours ago, he was a diplomat, just another human negotiating peace. Now he had fought one of the strongest warriors in the Empire and won. The realization hit him like a wave. Who am I becoming? The path to unity. Thera turned to the warriors. The war must end. Our people have suffered enough. Xavros exhaled, then stood. And what of the other warlords? They will not follow so easily. Daniel stepped in, still feeling the adrenaline of battle. Then let me talk to them. We don't need more bloodshed. Xavros studied him for a long moment, then nodded. You truly are different from the warriors of old. With that, the warlord clans began their retreat, taking their wounded and fallen. The war, at least for now, had come to a pause. Thera turned to Daniel, her expression unreadable. You saved more lives today than you know. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. Yeah, then why do I feel like this isn't over? Thera gave him a knowing smile. Because it isn't. The long night. Back at the hidden royal sanctuary, Daniel sat near the ancient temple ruins, staring at the stars above. His hands still tingled from holding the energy blade, his mind restless. Thera approached, sitting beside him. You should rest. Daniel sighed. Hard to do that when I just fought a warlord in single combat. She smirked. And won. He chuckled, shaking his head. You sound like you knew I would. Thera looked at him, her gaze deep and thoughtful. I did. Daniel felt his heartbeat quicken. Why? Because of the prophecy. She hesitated, partly, but also because I feel something familiar in you. Daniel turned to her. The way she looked at him, it was more than admiration. It was recognition. Have we met before? He asked softly. Thera's expression grew distant. Not in this lifetime. Daniel felt a strange pull toward her, as if his soul recognized something his mind couldn't understand. Before he could say anything else, a sudden blast echoed in the distance. They both turned toward the sanctuary. The sound of shouting and weapons clashing filled the air. Thera stood immediately. We're under attack. The betrayal. Daniel grabbed his blade and followed Thera as they rushed toward the royal chamber. Inside, they found several fallen guards, their bodies still warm. A group of warriors, dressed in royal armor, stood in the center, but their loyalty was not to the queen. Thera's expression darkened. What is the meaning of this? One of her closest advisors, Lord Vecren, stepped forward. His face was cold, his eyes filled with betrayal and ambition. My queen, he said, forgive me, but I cannot allow this human to sit at your side. Daniel clenched his fists. Of course, there would always be those who refused to accept him. Vecren continued. The Guardian's return is dangerous. If he truly is who the prophecy speaks of, then he will change everything. And I will not allow a human to decide the future of the Valeri Empire. Daniel stepped forward. This isn't about me, is it? This is about power. Vecren smirked. You understand quickly. He gestured to his warriors. Seize him. The guards charged forward. Daniel reacted instantly, dodging the first attack and knocking one soldier to the ground. Thera fought beside him, her energy blade flashing as she defended against multiple opponents. The fight was fast and brutal. Daniel moved on instinct, his body reacting before his mind could catch up. He disarmed one soldier, kicked another away, and blocked an incoming strike. But there were too many. Vecren watched with a smirk. You fight well, Guardian, but you are not invincible. Then, before Daniel could react, a sharp pain shot through his side. A stun blast hit him, sending a shockwave through his body. His vision blurred. His knees buckled. He fell. Daniel. Athera's voice was distant. He struggled to stay conscious, but the world faded to darkness. Captured. When Daniel opened his eyes, he was somewhere unfamiliar. The cold metal walls, the dim red lighting. It was a prison cell. His head ached, his limbs still weak from the stun blast. Footsteps echoed outside. The door slid open, revealing Vekran. Daniel forced himself to sit up. "You're making a mistake." Vekran smirked. "No, Guardian. The mistake was allowing you to walk free. You threaten everything we have built." Daniel glared at him. "Athera won't let this happen." Vekran chuckled. "She won't have a choice." He stepped aside, revealing another figure. Daniel's blood ran cold. It was a high-ranking warlord. Vekran smiled. "I have made a deal. The warlords will remove Athera from power, and in return, they get what they wanted all along." He leaned closer. "You." Daniel clenched his fists. He knew what this meant. The warlords didn't want him alive. They wanted him dead. Daniel sat against the cold metal wall of his prison cell, his wrists bound in energy restraints that hummed faintly with power. His body was still weak from the stun blast, but his mind was racing. Vekran's betrayal had turned everything upside down. He had made a deal with the warlords, offering them exactly what they wanted, Daniel. Footsteps echoed outside the cell. The door slid open, revealing Vekran and a high-ranking warlord commander. The warlord's crimson armor gleamed under the dim lights, his sharp, reptilian eyes scanning Daniel with contempt. "So," the warlord sneered, "this is the so-called Guardian." Vekran smirked. "A man, nothing more. The prophecy is a story, and stories do not win wars." Daniel glared at them. "You're making a mistake." Vekran folded his arms. "No, Daniel. The mistake was allowing you to become a symbol. If my people believe in you, then I will never be able to rule." The warlord commander chuckled. "Enough talk. Let's end this." Vekran gestured toward two guards. "Take him to the execution chamber." Daniel's stomach twisted. They weren't keeping him as a prisoner. They were going to kill him. Athera's plan. Meanwhile, deep within the royal sanctuary, Queen Athera paced the room, her mind racing. Daniel was captured. She could still hear the echoes of his last shot before he fell in battle. One of her trusted generals, Kirin, stepped forward. "My queen, we need to act now. Vekran has turned against us, and if Daniel dies..." Athera turned sharply. "He will not die." Her voice was steel. Kirin nodded. "Then what are your orders?" Athera's violet eyes burned with determination. "We attack." The execution chamber. Daniel was dragged through the corridors of the underground fortress, his arms still restrained. Two guards pushed him forward into a large, dark chamber. The warlord commander stood at the center, his massive energy sword humming in his hands. Vekran stood beside him, watching coldly. Daniel clenched his jaw. He had no weapon, no backup, no way out. The warlord commander raised his sword. "Any last words, human?" Daniel smirked, despite the situation. "Yeah, I think you're about to regret this." Before the warlord could react, a loud explosion shook the entire fortress. The walls trembled and the lights flickered. The warlord turned, eyes wide. "What?" The main doors blew open, and Athera stormed in with her warriors. The rescue had begun. The battle for freedom. The chamber erupted in chaos. Athera's warriors clashed with the warlord's forces, energy blades slicing through the air. The sound of battle filled the room. Blaster fire, shouts, metal against metal. Daniel used the distraction to act. He lunged at the guard beside him, slamming his foot into the alien's knee. The guard stumbled, and Daniel grabbed the stun baton from his belt. In one swift motion, he disarmed the second guard and knocked him unconscious. His hands still bound, Daniel ducked behind cover, trying to find a way to free himself. Athera spotted him from across the battlefield. Their eyes met. She tossed him a small dagger. Catch. Daniel snatched it midair and quickly cut through the energy restraints. Now he was ready to fight. The final duel. Vecren, realizing the battle was turning, drew his own golden blade and stepped toward Daniel. "You were never meant to be part of this empire," Vecren growled. "You are an outsider." "A mistake." Daniel tightened his grip on the dagger. "Funny, I was just thinking the same about you." Vecren attacked first, his blade swinging fast. Daniel dodged, barely avoiding the deadly strike. The duel began. Vecren was skilled, but Daniel was faster. He dodged each strike, using his agility to wear Vecren down. Then, Daniel saw his chance. Vecren overextended on a swing, and Daniel countered immediately, slashing across his armor. Vecren stumbled back, his breathing ragged. "You can't win," he panted. Daniel raised his weapon. "I already did." With a final strike, he knocked Vecren unconscious. The war ends. The battle was over. The warlord commander, seeing Vecren defeated and his forces losing, called for a retreat. Athera approached Daniel, her face unreadable. He met her gaze, still catching his breath. "Told you I'd fight again." A slow, warm smile crossed her lips. "Yes, and you fought well." The remaining enemies fled, leaving the fortress in silence. Daniel turned to Athera. "What happens now?" She looked around at the fallen enemies, the ruins of betrayal. Then she met his eyes. "Now we rebuild." She took a step closer. Together. Daniel felt something shift in that moment, not just in the Empire, but within himself. For the first time, he knew where he belonged. The sun was rising over Selvera, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. The battlefield was silent now, except for the sounds of wounded soldiers receiving medical aid and warriors gathering the fallen. Daniel Carter stood at the edge of the ruins, watching as the warlord forces retreated into the distant mountains. The battle was over. The rebellion had failed. He should have felt relief. Instead, he felt something else, something deeper. A hand touched his shoulder. He turned to see Queen Athera, standing beside him. Her silver hair shimmered in the sunlight, and her violet eyes held something unreadable. "You did it," she said softly. Daniel shook his head. "No, we did." She studied him for a long moment. "Do you finally understand now?" Daniel exhaled. He had spent so much time questioning everything. The prophecy, the visions, his place among the Velaryi. But now, he nodded. "Yeah, I think I do." A kingdom rebuilt. Over the next few days, the empire slowly began to rebuild. The warlord clans had withdrawn, their leaders forced into exile. Vecren had been imprisoned, awaiting trial for his betrayal. Athera's forces were securing the cities, ensuring peace returned to the land. Daniel walked through the royal capital, seeing Velaryi children playing in the streets again, markets reopening, and people laughing. This wasn't just a victory. This was a new beginning. The Queen's decision. One evening, Athera called Daniel to the royal palace balcony, where she stood looking out over the city. When he approached, she turned to him. "I have made a decision," she said. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "About what?" She exhaled, as if gathering her thoughts. "About the future of our people. About what comes next." She stepped closer, her gaze intense. "And about us." Daniel felt his pulse quicken. "Us?" She hesitated for only a second before speaking. "You were more than a warrior in another life. You were my partner, my equal. And I do not believe it was only in the past." Daniel held her gaze. "What are you saying?" Athera took a breath. "I do not want to rule alone." Daniel felt his chest tighten. "You mean?" She nodded. "Stay. Rule with me." The words hit him hard. He had spent so much time thinking of himself as an outsider. But now, After everything, after the battles, the victories, the sacrifices, this world felt more like home than anywhere else ever had. He looked at Athera, at the way she watched him with quiet expectation. She wasn't just asking for a ruler. She was asking for a partner, a choice to make. Daniel walked through the quiet palace halls, thinking, could he do this? Could he stay in a world so different from his own? Could he leave his past behind and accept his place here? The answer came easier than he expected. He already had. Destiny fulfilled. That night, Daniel returned to the royal chamber, where Athera was waiting. She turned to him, searching his expression. Have you decided? Daniel took a deep breath. Yeah. He stepped closer, holding her gaze. I'm not leaving. Athera's eyes softened, and for the first time, he saw something in her that he hadn't before. Relief. She smiled, something warm and real. Then it is decided. She took a step forward, and for the first time, embraced him. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the warmth of her presence, the weight of everything that had led them here. And then she whispered the words that sealed his fate. You were always meant for me. Daniel smiled. Maybe she was right. Maybe he was exactly where he was meant to be. The end.